All right, thanks everybody for joining us for our final panel of the day. This is the talk about tarantulas, so hopefully nobody is really scared of spiders in the audience here, but don't worry, these are just photographs and videos, so nothing is actually going to come at you in today's panel. My name is Kristin Salamack. I work for the Colorado Department of Transportation as their Fish and Wildlife Service liaison. So I primarily advise Colorado DOT on all things pertaining to listed, threatened, and endangered species, and also conservation measures and things of that sort. And today we're going to be talking to you about a really interesting species that is not listed, but it's very unique and has drawn a lot of attention in the southeast corner of Colorado. So my fellow panelists, I'll let them introduce themselves as they come up. And yeah, we're just gonna get going because we have a lot of cool pictures and videos to share on this presentation. Oh, I don't know what I just did. Sorry, somehow I skipped all the way to the end of the presentation. There's like not room for the mouse to move. Ooh.
Where is it?
Sorry, I don't know what I did.
Looking for the screen or something.
Yeah. Maybe I should just do it on the These are good. I can rip my head out. Yeah, I'll use the instead of the mouse, I'll use the trackpad.
No worries. No, I'm sorry. They just have the mouse the keys. So that's from test.
There you go.
Okay.
Just
Okay.
stick to the arrow.
The arrows. Okay. Right. All right. Sorry about that. We're back on. Okay. So my role is really going to just be to provide a general overview of the study. This is CDOT study and it's sort of evolved over time. So then my fellow panelists will come up and introduce themselves and sort of share the in-the-weeds details about their portions of the study. So this is the state DOT's perspective on a really unique collaborative research opportunity with tarantulas. So just to orient you here, sorry, this is the wonderful square state of Colorado. So where we're located up in the Denver metro area, our study area and where we're focused is the town of La Junta, which I don't know if you can see that little dot down there, but it's in extreme southeast Colorado, halfway between Pueblo and the Kansas border. It is occurring along the Arkansas River, so it's not totally arid, but it's compared to our previous panelists who were talking about estuaries and lots of water. This isn't a very, very dry grassland ecosystem. The area around the town of La Junta is predominantly agricultural, so there's a lot of potato farming, melon farming. For those of you who have heard of Rocky Ford cantaloupes, those are grown in this region of the state. And it's also a hub for ranching and for the railroad industry. So why are we looking at this part of the state? Well, it's where the tarantulas are. Tarantula mating season starts in August and it runs through October or early November. And this is when the males go on the move to search for females. So it's not what you would traditionally refer to as a migration, but sometimes we refer to it as a mategration because it is really just the males going out to search for females to mate with. And I'll let Francisco from the Butterfly Pavilion share more about the life history of tarantulas and their ecology. So the town of La Junta has really embraced the attention it's received around tarantulas as a way to drive economic growth and bring tourism to the region. So starting about 3 years ago, they started having a tarantula festival. So it takes place in September, usually towards the mid to end of September, and they have parades. I especially like this picture because they somehow converted some kind of construction vehicle into something that looks like a tarantula. They have dress-up contests, and of course, they most importantly have educational events and field trips where tarantula researchers come out and share information about tarantulas. So this really resulted in some safety issues for CDOT on the highway south of La Junta. This safety issue was brought to our attention by the town of La Junta and also by U.S. Forest Service. They manage the Comanche National Grasslands in this area. And U.S. Forest Service actually reached out and said, you know, there's so many people stopping along these roads during the tarantula mating season. Can you please put up a VMS, a variable message sign, to remind people not to stop in the middle of the road? So there's lots of people stopping to view the tarantulas. The shoulders are super narrow in this area, so there's really not a great place to pull off. There's no parking lots or anything like that. And, you know, typically when you think of a DOT and a lot of the other presentations you've heard today, we focus on wildlife species that have a collision impact with our motorists. And, you know, tarantula is not going to stop a car or definitely a semi, but it is a species of interest in the area. So we really wanted to be able to, you know, help out the local community with a species that they have a special interest in, while also finding a way to address the safety concerns. So just to give you an overview of the timeline, or I'm sorry, of our study area. So this is the Comanche National Grasslands. This is a very lush picture. Some of the subsequent photos you'll see does not look quite that green and lush. But we focused on national grasslands and also private grasslands. So you can see the study area includes US Highway 350 all the way to the left or to the west. And then in the middle of State Highway 109, that's the one that traverses the majority of Comanche National Grasslands in the darker brown there. And then we also looked at State Highway 101 on the east end. And that primarily goes through private ranchland. So to go through just sort of the evolution of the timeline in this project and, you know, why we were sort of even thinking about studying tarantulas. Back in June of 2022, the director of the environmental programs branch at CDOT had heard about the safety concerns, had heard about the first inaugural tarantula festival, and asked me, when we went out to lunch, is there anything we can do for the tarantulas and for these safety issues? And I knew nothing about tarantulas whatsoever. So I said, I don't know, I'll look into it. It just so happened that my graduate advisor from when I went to the University of Denver, Dr. Rich Reading, he was formerly the director of conservation at the Denver Zoo and had taken a job as the director of conservation, or sorry, the VP of conservation for the Butterfly Pavilion, which is, as far as I know, Francisco, correct me if I'm wrong, it's like the only invertebrate zoo in North America? Only accredited. Thank you. So really unique that we had that just north of Denver in Westminster or Broomfield. So I thought, okay, I'll reach out to Rich, and I have a connection there, and see if he wants to team up and do something for the tarantulas. And when I reached out to him, it just so happened that he was working with a graduate student out of the Colorado State University who was studying tarantulas in this part of the state. So it just, everything sort of fell into place, and we figured, okay, let's team up and see what we can do. We got some funding from State Planning and Research Board, and had Butterfly Pavilion develop a scope of work initially to place cameras, about 10 cameras across the landscape in Comanche National Grasslands to see if we could just kind of opportunistically catch male tarantulas like moving on their routes. And unfortunately, within a few months of placing the cameras out there, we realized that they were all stolen. So that was not going to work for our study without cameras. So we had to do a pretty hard pivot to figure out how we were going to get data about tarantulas down there. So Butterfly Pavilion developed sort of a dual approach of doing a combination of burrow density surveys and also road surveys looking for both dead and alive tarantulas crossing the roads in the study area. So they started that in August of 2023, and then we also placed a couple of Reconyx cameras in 2 culverts, one concrete box culvert and one corrugated metal pipe culvert that travel under State Highway 109, just to see if we could pick up any tarantulas that were opportunistically using those culverts. And then flash forward to August of 2024, we evolved the project again, repeated the burrow density and road surveys, and then we also had new cameras that we placed into the culverts that were better able to capture video and just much better imagery. And we brought Animex into the project and partnered with them on some temporary fencing that we put to funnel wildlife to those existing culverts. So this is just a depiction of the concrete box culvert and the corrugated metal pipe culvert. This was the first year, 2023, when we put just sort of the fixed cameras up in the ceiling. And these were programmed to take a photograph every minute. That resulted in a ton of data, and also required some of our regional biologists to go out there every couple weeks to put a new SD card in, because it was just, and to replace the batteries because it was just running through really quickly. So it wasn't the most efficient process. And also, after going through all of those photos, we did not see any tarantulas using either culvert. So in 2024, we amended the scope of work so that we worked with Animex to install a combination of semi-permanent and temporary fencing around these culverts to see if we could effectively funnel tarantulas to the culverts. I'm going to let Steve mostly go into like the installation process of it, but I will say that the installation of this fencing was done primarily by biologists with CDOT volunteering their time to go out and dig in the soil and put the fencing up. The temporary fencing was put on our right-of-way fence with zip ties, and then there will be some pictures here of the semi-permanent fencing. So you can see in this picture the semi-permanent fencing in the black travels out sort of in wing walls from each culvert, and then we connected it with like kind of little mini jump outs to our right-of-way fencing, and that's the temporary fence in the white. And we were able to confirm that tarantulas could not scale the fencing, and in the field we accidentally dug up a tarantula while we were installing it, but it was a good proof of concept to see, that the tarantula actually could not climb up the fence. So along with dealing with very hot temperatures in the summer to install the fencing, in November, we had to remove the temporary fencing because of the snow issue. We didn't want it to pile up on our right-of-way fence. And of course, in November, when we planned to take it out, it snowed, which necessitated us bringing shovels again to dig it out of all of that snow. So it was not nearly as easy an operation as we were hoping. And then we had to roll up all that fencing, and our hope is that we can reuse it sometime in the future. And in addition, I mentioned we had new cameras installed in the culverts. So we purchased 2 new Halt 2 cameras, which you can see Steve installing there in the picture on the right. So there's a threshold that when an animal walks across it, it triggers the camera to take a video. So those videos were just much clearer and just much better accuracy and data capture for passes of wildlife using the culvert. And I don't know if any of you can see this blurry table here. Apologies for how small it is, but this is just to see the variety of wildlife, including tarantulas. So tarantulas are at the top. We were able to see 2 in the box culvert, and then 10 passed through the pipe culvert. And just to note that these are a number of camera passes, so these aren't individual animals. In fact, especially the birds seem to really like to hang out on that threshold. So they would kind of like hop around and dance around and trigger the video to take like every second a new video, especially that northern mockingbird was like really into doing that. So a lot of the birds are just one individual. But this is just to show, with using that temporary fencing, we were able to funnel a whole bunch of other species in addition to tarantulas as well. And with that, I will turn it over to Francisco, who's going to walk through the results in the butterfly pavilion portion of the study.
Thank you, Kristin. Before I start, I just want to say that I am Francisco, Director of Research and Conservation at Butterfly Pavilion. So how cool is this study? We actually started with tarantulas doing conservation. You normally start with the big animals, the elephants, the bears, and you end up doing conservation for the little ones. I found this fascinating because we started with the little ones and we ended up saving all these big animals out there, birds, reptiles, mammals. So this is really amazing that the spiders are saving all these animals behind them. So yeah, we at Butterfly Pavilion, we're like the only vertebrate zoo accredited by the zoos and aquariums in North America. Our species of study here is the only tarantula found in Colorado. So this is Aphonopelma hentzi, also known as the Texas or the Oklahoma brown tarantula. Here we had some videos that you saw. What's really cool about this spider is that it's a tarantula that is found in the northernmost part of North America. So tarantulas we have a lot in the Americas. Most of them are going to be in the tropics, in Mexico, in Central America. But this one is lucky enough to make it to Colorado. We don't find them in Wyoming or Montana. So this is very important that this is the northernmost part that we find them. And this is related to winter. So clearly, the more cold you get in winter, that's going to be a big limitation for tarantulas to be able to survive. So this area was really, really cool that we have that there. And Kristin already explained that this festival. So they are really, really celebrated in this part of the world. It's brown to reddish brown, and the size it's about 10 to 15 centimeters. They are terrestrial and they like to burrow in the grasslands. What's really cool about this species and most tarantulas is their spatial accommodation. So females will not move much in their entire lives. Females can live up to 25 to 30 years for terrestrial spiders. Females will remain in their burrow for most of their lifetime. What happens then? If females are not moving, there's an extra evolutionary pressure for the boys to be looking for these girls. That's why we have all these boys just moving all over the place. That's why we call it a migration and not a migration, because the boys are just scattering all around the space looking for these girls around in these spaces. So in our methodology, we had two different things. So we were working with the males into understanding that. For the males, we were just looking for these patterns of movements and where they are walking. And then for the females, we were looking for their different burrows. So these were our objectives were mapping the tarantula distribution. We were using GPS, just putting down the data on every single location where we would find live or dead tarantulas around the roads that Kristin mentioned before, which is the 350, the 109, and the 101. And we did this study throughout 2 different years just to understand the differences of these patterns of movements between years, and if males were moving at different rates, if they were choosing different parts of these roads. So we just wanted to understand these different movements. We analyzed these spatial and temporal trends and just compare them throughout the different years. And we also assess population density by just going out in the field and walking transects along these roads, trying to find holes and trying to find the female spiders around these holes. So we were working around this reproductive biology that the tarantulas had, and we were tackling the movement of the boys, and we were tackling the density where the females are. So this is all linked, and we could also understand all these patterns and population patterns around the different species. So for our road surveys, we hire 2 different technicians every year. They were really, really amazing. They would just drive along these roads on times that the tarantulas are going to be active. So they don't like to be active during like the middle of the day because it gets too hot. So we're going to have them being active either early morning or late afternoon. So our technicians would just go out there and just be looking for these spiders around these roads. Every time they would see a spider dead or alive, they would just put down data on the GPS just to know where we were finding them. For the burrow density surveys, we have a little map there of a little human. We would just walk this transect with this little measuring wheel, and that will allow us to go on a straight line. Every time we would see holes, we would just go around that hole, poke a little stick there, and if we could feel something biting that stick, then we would mark it as a female. It was really fun being with them. We would laugh a lot. And sometimes the females would just really fight. So they have personalities, which is pretty awesome. You have some females that are going to be really feisty and some that will be really shy. And we'll talk about this in the results, which was affecting really big time the results that we were having. Then we did statistical analysis just to understand about these differences in patterns. This is just a little video, and it's a boy spider. I forgot to say, males in the spider are going to be more spindly, very long legs, very small bodies, and this is related to their only need in biology, which is you need to move a lot to find these females, so you need very big legs, while the females are going to be more bumpy and more sturdy and more beefy. And it's also related to the reproductive biology. Sometimes the females will eat the males. So you have to be a very smart male to just do your reproductive biology, meet the female, and then run away as fast as you can, because otherwise the female will just get you and is going to eat you, so she can get that extra protein for the egg sac. Great. These are the results. So this is the results of the number of dead and alive tarantulas we saw during our surveys. So the color blue is showing you the results for 2023, the color orange is 2024, and we can see this different trend of number of spiders that we've had around the road. So they are very active from late August to early November, and their peak was definitely around early to mid-September, and that was quite the same trend for both of the years. We had around 278 living tarantulas in 2023, and 96 were dead. And then in 2024, we had 256 live tarantulas, and 75 of them were dead. So we're clearly having big mortality on certain roads. So this is a map of the three different roads that we were working with. These are results from both 2023 and 2024. Things to notice is, for example, the tarantulas of 2024 are green, so we can see on this road in the middle, which was one line road from the middle one, we had quite a big mortality of spiders. And once we compare these results with everything that we did with the culverts, this is pretty interesting. So the culverts were put on 2024, and we did have big differences. This is the high culvert, and you can see quite a reduction around this culvert. So we did have an effect saving the spider lives, specifically the males, because around this, the high culvert, we definitely reduced that mortality. On the other side, here is a higher mortality. This is for the box culvert. This was created because the Forest Service had an entrance point around this one, and they asked me not to fence it. So this one didn't have that fence that was funneling the spiders. So clearly that fence is making also a big impact into funneling not just spiders, but other animals into the protected part of the culverts. Great. Finally, for the density estimations, these are the rough numbers. This is for 2023, which was around 50 individuals per transect. On 2025 is the last study of the burrows. And we did two transects. One is in yellow, the second one is in purple, and this is really cool to see. The purple shows a really big increase in their burrows of the females. And this is explained because we were using a fluoroscope. So it's like a long tube with a camera at the end, so you can spy on what's happening inside of the hole. So clearly we had quite a high density because we were looking at these spiders. And this linked to what I mentioned at the beginning, that some are really shy, some are really feisty. Before that, we were only using that little stick. So we would only count a spider inside that hole if we had someone pulling or fighting that stick. In this case, we would see a lot of spiders just running away, which is the very shy females. So it means that in the first ones, we would not count these females because we didn't feel any spider inside of these holes, which actually we have many of them will have been there, which is pretty cool. So once we confirm this, we would just confirm the personality of the spider. Some of them would attack the camera, some of them would just run away from that camera. Great. And just like as a conclusion of the whole study that we did at Butterfly Pavilion, we identify high-risk crossing areas around these three different roads. The pipe culvert fencing was successful at reducing this road mortality. Box culvert was also part of successful, but that incomplete fencing was less effective at protecting the lives of these spiders. We recommend just following up. This is like a really great study. As I said at the beginning of the talk, these are spiders saving big animals, which is pretty awesome how they're behind that. And we recommend increasing this fencing and just increasing this funneling for protection. These findings support invertebrate conservation, often overlooked area in wildlife management, and just monitor long-term effectiveness of these underpasses for population sustainability in the future. Thank you. Now I'm going to pass it on to Steve.
Thank you, Francisco. Okay, My name's Steve Mars. I work for Animex International. I've been there for about a couple years now. Retired fish and wildlife biologist with 30 years of service. And so today I'm going to give you kind of a breakdown and some of the challenges and some of the successful things that we did out there in La Junta. Just for a show of hands, did anybody in the group here see the film last night? Okay, thank you. So for those that missed it, we had an independent filmmaker come out and do a film about what we, Kristin and Francisco, have been showing you. And it really highlighted just the effort that was put behind it, but really the passion between biologists, landowners, the Forest Service. There was a really great interview from a rancher, that clearly was more than just somebody that raised cows, that he really had a great respect and an understanding, a real strong biological appreciation for this landscape. So it was really kind of a special film, and I know that it was kind of still in its raw form, and hopefully, over the next month or two, the director will have that available for the ICOET audience. So with that, I'll just jump into my presentation. Basically, working with CDOT and the Butterfly Pavilion in Southeast Colorado, our team was able to successfully use existing culvert infrastructure. And that's what was really great about this is this was no capital improvement project. We just went out, found a couple of these high density burrow areas that had great habitat, and we capitalized on a couple existing culverts that were in, and we just placed a few thousand feet of fencing on both sides of the road. And anyway, you can we'll talk a little bit more about the success of that. But again, we're dealing with the Comanche National Grasslands, and at the close of my session, but all of us will go into a Q&A, and hopefully you'll have the tools to confidently plan and undertake your own road ecology project. So let's see if I do this right. It's the arrow, right? Okay, great. So just how we started with this project, how Animex got involved is back in Vermont in 2023. Was the last Vermont host, Chris, I think I saw you in the back. Vermont hosted the last 2023 ICOET, and Jane Hahn, who's an environmental programs manager. I understand she's not here this week. She's had a pretty pressing schedule right now. But she approached me and asked, if we ever worked on an invertebrate wildlife fence project before. And somewhere in her discussion, she dropped the word tarantula. And that kind of just now puts a little chill up my spine, because, we all know tarantulas is, something that's kind of hairy and creepy and dark and sinister. And so, so what I said was, okay, it's got a checkered reputation, but definitely we were game for doing this project with CDOT. So later, Jackie Bellotti, I was of the Butterfly Pavilion, and in this film that was last night, she is just a lightning rod of energy and just passion for this animal. And she was the star of that film last night. It really was. It's great to just see that energy that she had for the film. So anyway, once I talked to Jackie, I found out that the brown tarantula, it's got a pretty sizable habitat, here in the Southwest of U.S. So I think it's California to Texas, and maybe even a little bit of northern Mexico. But as everybody here knows, that the life history of these animals, or, are threatened by roads, and highways. So at the conclusion of the conference in Vermont, I quickly Googled tarantulas in Colorado. And what I found was there was a lot of information that had to deal with the brown tarantula here in Colorado. I found out that there was there's a festival in La Junta, and they celebrate, the tarantula. I found out that there's a lot of people that travel from California to Texas to this festival, and even at the festival, people from Europe come here to see. So I had no idea that there was such an appreciation for this animal, until we got pulled in to work on this project. So let's see here. Hope I didn't go too fast. Okay. So just kind of to kind of recap things, here we have a culvert infrastructure list, which I talked about before. CDOT, as many of you DOTs out there, they know where every culvert is on these highways, just about every one. And so what we did is I went out with Butterfly Pavilion with Jackie, and we looked at probably 15 of these crossing structures, and we narrowed it down to two structures. And so we then correlated those while we were reviewing those different structures. We also correlated that with the known vehicle hotspots for the tarantula strikes. And so that got us down to, two of these culverts to do the work. So we began our project last August. Our site is pretty remote. Everything that we had to do to put this project together, we had to bring into the site. So there's no electricity out there. This is quite a remote site, and there was some logistical challenges with doing this project, but we had a lot of passionate biologists. We had the volunteer workforce from BP, from Butterfly Pavilion. We had numerous folks from CDOT that attended from different disciplines. So it was really a great collaboration of different folks, different backgrounds to get this project off the ground. So once we figured out who was going to show up to do the work, Kristin, she put together this a 3-page list of tasks on who was going to do what, and so we knew that it was going to be hot. This is August, and it's a pretty desolate area, sort of. It's a grassland, and everything is brown out there, and it is hot. So our days started at 6 o'clock in the morning, and by noon we were all pretty much parched from that weather that's out there. It's just warm and it's dry, and we were burning. Everybody was drinking gallons of water every day, Gatorade. It just, it was a little challenging, but again, the passion of the group that was there, we were able to work with this. So what we did is we put, if you could see in some of the pictures, we have these special cameras. These are threshold activated cameras. The Michael Hobbs, he's got a booth outside. So if you haven't visited him yet, definitely go and do this, because these culverts are great in terms of, it just captures all animals. Some of the video that we have shows caterpillars going across this. So your typical thermal or motion detection, camera that's, possibly 6 feet away from the target, it may not pick up, the animals that are moving through these culverts once you built this project. So we used this laser device, and it was really a effective at capturing every single critter that walked through those pipes. We also had to construct individual wood frames. So if you see, we had to put the frames inside the folders, drag the animal across the threshold. We did this whole in the 36-inch pipe, and we did this in 8x10 spots. And that was really helpful in making sure that we captured nearly all the animals that were passing through that. The substrate there was pretty hard. So this was like really I don't want to say concrete, but it was wicked to dig through this. You had to get through like 6 inches of a really hard pan substrate, and then afterwards it was easier to dig. So when we were digging, we had to use hand shovels close to the infrastructure structures, and then as we got further away from it, we were able to use we rented a trencher, and that was brought in to do, you know, the most of the work in terms of burying the fence. So that way, if, you know, like we had badgers in the area, and so we didn't want them to start digging holes under the fence. So the fence was buried anywhere from 6 to 12 inches down. It has a bottom lip to it. So that way, if a badger was able to get down and hit the fence and started digging down, he would see that, he would encounter that lip. And we wanted to make sure that we didn't have this happen, because then you have an avenue, a hole under your fence, where now you might be having all these animals coming down along the fence, and then they just go through that hole, and now they're out on the road. So, you know, we had to get that fence down deep enough to avoid those digging animals. So some of the lessons learned, you know, is that like with any project that you're doing, these connectivity projects, you know, you have to remain flexible in planning the installation and the monitoring of the project. For this for us in La Junta, there was no exception. You know, we talk a little bit about Mother Nature, and you know, you can see from the, you know, we were there for basically 4 months apart, and we went from nearly 100-degree days working to, you know, we had to come in and move temperature. You can see the temperature sort of pulled out. You know, we were dealing with, you know, 30-degree temperatures in the course of 120 days. So Mother Nature was hard on this project, but, you know, like any of these road construction projects, you know, you have to just work around Mother Nature. You know, we had some tools that broke. We had vehicles that kind of got stuck. You know, and a couple of times we had to chase down subcontractors to make sure that they were on site, you know, when we needed them. So for the practitioner, you know, you want to secure as many stakeholders as you can in the development, in the planning and the development of your project. You want to talk to your DOT maintenance folks, and I can't emphasize enough, you know, the expertise that the maintenance folks have, and what they can do in terms of making your projects a success. So, you know, like if you can, bring them cookies, bring them brownies, bring them your firstborn, you know, because really you need to have them joined at your hip. If you don't have the maintenance people there, your projects, I just do here. How come I don't see that on my screen? Is that just going to go away? Oh, maybe. Okay. So anyway, make sure your maintenance folks are there. I can't emphasize that enough. Let's see. You also, you know, because the Forest Service was an adjacent landowner, they showed up one day. All their management showed up to see what we were doing. You know, the whole southeast southwest region of the Forest Service management showed up to see this project underway. So, you know, again, the landowners, I talked a little bit about the film, you know, the rancher, you know, it was not unusual as we were building this project for people to pull over on the side of the road or ask us at one of the restaurants that we were at 5:30 in the morning or in the evening to just say, you know, what's all the fuss that's going on on Route 109? What are you guys doing out there? So again, you know, just, you know, you're going to get your stakeholders. You want your public there. You want your public to be supportive of what you guys are doing. The landowners, the users, like I was talking about, you know, the rancher that has the lease with the Forest Service, you know, he really great guy, really wonderful to be around and listen to what he had and his appreciation for the environment. And, you know, what we also learned about this project that was really incredible was, you know, it was an existing infrastructure project. So again, very small capital, no capital improvement funds were used. But once it was built, so many animals started using these structures that we captured. And you know, so it's like, okay, we were out there to work to do this thing for tarantulas, but you know, clearly the whole ecosystem that's there, that whole land, all the animals that depend on that landscape, you know, a good portion of them were captured using these structures after we put in the fencing and put in the cameras. So I would say, you know, if you build these types of projects, they're going to come. You know, they would rather, you know, we you know, as scientists, practitioners in road ecology, we know the effects of noise, of vehicles, and you know, for these animals to stay down low, you know, down below the side slope, you know, the noise is much less there. And for them, if they can find this infrastructure, they're going to use it. And so, you know, I can't thank enough the folks in CDOT and the Butterfly Pavilion in terms of doing this project. It was really, for me, as a fish biologist, I really learned a lot about this animal, and I learned a lot about this landscape and the animals that depend on this landscape. And I can't thank enough the people of La Junta, because without them, this project likely would not have come off, because, you know, when you have the public that's interested, you know, in a wildlife project, clearly, you know, they are the major driver in why we were here today and presenting this to you. And so lastly, September 26th and 27th is when the Tarantula Festival is. So if you are from the area, you should definitely try and check it out. So that's it. Thank you.
Thanks to all my fellow panelists. We have a few minutes for questions until we need to break for the poster reception. And if we have time at the end after questions, we do have a few selective videos that we can show of the animals that were captured moving through the culverts. So I'll try to keep an eye on time so we can maybe have time to share some of those. But any questions from folks? Yeah.
Some animals will hit them in the pump, some will hit it in bounce. Do you ever get a sense of what the Tarantulas do? Are they following along with this?
I'll share like my observation, and then Francisca, you can jump in and check my understanding, since I'm not an entomologist, but my understanding from talking with Jackie Vellotti, who's the graduate student that we've mentioned up at CSU, that they're kind of, they just sort of spread out, and they're very low energy animals. So if they can go over something easily, they will, but if they can't, they'll just walk along it. So we did not put like cameras on the fencing to like verify, you know, tarantulas that were approaching versus, you know, getting turned around. But Yeah, Francisco, do you have anything else to add?
Like, it would be interesting to run an experiment to understand what chances are, and if you can lure them towards one part or the other.
Yeah.
Here's the cameras in place before the fencing, or if that's after the fencing.
Oh, we removed, the question was, were the cameras placed before the fencing or after the fencing? So yes and no. So that we had 2 Reconyx cameras in the first year in 2023, and that was before the fencing. There was no fencing in 2023. In 2024, we had the new cameras that took video, and those were installed at the same time as the fencing. So our plan, CDOT's plan is for this next year to put those same Halt 2 cameras back in those culverts without the fencing so that we can get an apples to apples comparison, because it is possible with those Reconyx cameras that, you know, maybe some tarantulas or other animals were in there and they just weren't being captured in the 1 minute time frame when the picture was being taken. And so we want to throw the cameras, the Halt 2 cameras back in there so we can just sort of see, you know, and compare what is the decline once the fencing is down, so that we can then use that to sort of leverage future funding to continue the study. Yes.
You have a good sense of what the tarantulas are going to buy that things, or they track the pheromones? Is that something that you use in relation with the crossings?
For the males, yeah, so they walk in the space randomly, and once they hit the spider web of the female, that's when they approach the female. So luring with spider web would be potentially a really cool experiment to run towards luring them into the culverts, for sure.
And I don't know if you could do that at Butterfly Pavilion where you have, or do you have any males or do you just have females?
We've been trying to mate. So in order to mate tarantulas, what you need to do with the males is put like part of the web of the female to the male, so he begins to understand the female and kind of read characteristics of her, and then you allow him to go into the female. So you give him like a head start on understanding, because it's a very tricky process for sure.
If there's no more questions, I just wanted to quickly go through some of the videos that we have here, because they're just really, really awesome. So this is our corrugated metal pipe culvert. So you can see a pretty good view of a tarantula there. And here's one at nighttime. So this one, and you can tell whatever they can sort of feel with their legs or with their feet. Like if they can feel that there's nothing on the other side of it, then they'll just keep going. So this is a good example of that behavior, that is kind of like looking underneath the barrier there, and it recognizes that it can't actually fit. So it continues on eventually. Oh, and here's a really, if it wants to play, this is one of the best specimens that we get, or larger ones. But of course, as Steve was saying, in addition, and Francisco, in addition to the tarantulas that we were hoping for, we also got a whole bunch of other animals. So this is the concrete box culvert. And we got a tiger salamander, super cute, just poking along. And we were really surprised to see these guys. We saw a few of them both in the box and the pipe culvert, and there were some like very shallow playas, but there was not a lot of water out in this area. So it was surprising that they were there. This is a nice video of a prairie rattlesnake slithering along. So we got quite a lot of snakes. I don't know if you were able to see in the table at the end of my presentation, but multiple species of snakes. They seemed really interested in using, especially the pipe culvert. Let's see if don't pause on me. This is a king snake, which you can't, unfortunately you can't see its head, but I just thought the pattern on it was really beautiful. Let's see, just got a couple more minutes I want to get through. There's another rattlesnake here, and you can see, I mean, obviously the rattlesnake is triggering the video here, but there's a tiny little caterpillar that's also poking along. So like we would see a bunch of videos where it was just, you know, sometimes you would be like, what is even triggering the camera here? And it could be like a fly or a moth or something just like really tiny going across. So can't emphasize enough how great these cameras are if you're trying to pick up the smaller critters. let's see, who do we have here? Oh, yes, this is one of our desert cottontails. Seems to be very interested in the barrier structure here, checking it out. Let's see. Oh, and here's a black-tailed jackrabbit. He's not hanging around very long. This is our one badger that we caught moving through the box culvert. So really only the larger animals were going through the box culvert. Also a surprisingly healthy looking domestic cat. This was like 10 miles south of the town of La Junta. There's no houses around here, so I'm not sure how this cat made it out there and looks in such good condition. As I mentioned, the birds, lots of birds like to just like hang out by the barrier. So we would get lots of videos of birds just hanging out there. This is a house wren. I did a relatively good job of identifying all the bird species, rodents, not so much. So if you saw that table, there were a whole bunch of different rodent species, and I did have somebody from Colorado Natural Heritage go through and just give me like the genus of those. So there were quite a few. And if anybody's interested, I can look back at my slides and refresh my memory of what we had shrews, we had rats, of course, various mice, things like that. This is a loggerhead shrike. I'm a bird person, so I was particularly happy to see these guys. And then for those of you who were at the reception last night, we had our burrowing owls, which were, really interesting to see. They were just really, I mean, obviously the birds don't need to use the culverts. They can fly over the road. So I'm not sure if these guys were like kind of scoping it out. Oh, this is like a ready-made burrow, and maybe we can find some food in here. But they are of course like very charismatic. And I think this one shows them actually flying through if it'll load properly. You can see it's a little bit windy there, and that one's looking back like, hey, are you coming? And yep, there he goes. So those are some of the cooler videos that we got. But yeah, it's just a interesting project, and I'm very thankful for Francisco and for Steve and for the collaboration that made this project possible, and also for just CDOT being willing to take a chance on a kind of wild project like this. You don't think of too many DOTs doing something for invertebrates, so it's as far as I know, one of the first of its kind. But if anybody hears from another state DOT that has done something similarly inventive, I don't want to steal your thunder, please let me know. I'd love to connect with you. But feel free to ask us questions. We'll be around the rest of the conference. Thank you. Thank you so much. Did you guys make those t-shirts?
Yeah, well, like one of our like coworkers made all of them. Yeah.